Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalam ala sayyidil mursaleen nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He grants us the best of tawfiq and success in the dunya and in the akhirah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us that which will benefit us. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fills our moments up with righteous actions and good deeds. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He preserves us upon Islam and Iman, and He teaches us from the religion that will benefit us in the dunya and the akhirah. This is our first session where we are looking at a new book and a new topic, and over the next, I would say probably 4 or 5 sessions we'll be going over this particular book. And I think I mentioned this last time, that the idea here is that we have a tamheedi level, and then probably a bit more advanced level, and then probably the most advanced level from the different mutun. Mutun is an important word because there are more advanced books as well, but these are, the purpose of it is that they're supposed to be brief, they're supposed to be introductory, but there's different levels of it when it comes to the principles of the Sharia. And when I say the principles of Sharia, here we have 2 main areas, okay? We've got the diraya and we've got the riwaya. And I'm going to be starting to write things down because there's a lot of information, there's a lot of terminologies, etc. So maybe we can do this one first, right? Which is, you've got the diraya. So here we've got the sharia. My handwriting is really bad. You guys haven't seen my handwriting. My handwriting is just squiggles, I'm telling you. Anyway, you've got the sharia, yeah? On this side here, you've got the diraya. On this side here, you've got the riwaya. Okay? The diraya refers to the study of the texts, whereas the riwaya refers to the study of the chain. And what we mean by the texts here, we talk about the principles connected to the study of the text, is the actual study of the text itself, the meaning of the text, the ahkam of the text, etc. That's one thing when it comes to diraya. So now you got a hadith, for example, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. That's the diraya, that's the text. The sanad is the riwaya. Yeah? So now you've got the chain of narration is the riwaya. Now you've got the text here in front of you. What do we get from that text? What it means, what ahkam you can get from it, etc. Now from that, we can have now the study of the text and the study of the ahkam of the sharia. And that in itself as a principle, I'm going to talk about this more in a little while, is the study of fiqh and usool al-fiqh. And then the riwayah is the study of the isnad and its chain and the men in that chain, which we would probably call, I'm sure you've heard before, the science of hadith, mustalah hadith, dirayat riwayah. Now, my mission, as I'm sure you guys are all aware, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to facilitate and to accept it, is to go through the library of the Shaykh Uthaymeen. And one of the things that Uthaymeen has done is that he's got, like I've said, you could probably categorize it like this, that you've got basic books, a bit more advanced and a bit more advanced. So the first level, the first tier, is this risala here that we're going to start today, which is, to be honest, it's not really a basic book actually, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a minute. But this is called Mukhtasar ala ba'd al-Qawaaid al-Fiqhiyyah. The title seems to suggest that it's supposed to be basic. Mukhtasar, it's a short treatise on some of the principles and the rulings of the Sharia. What are we studying there? The diraya. And there's a difference between Qawaaid al-Fiqhiyyah and Usool al-Fiqh. Again, I'm going to talk about it in a second, right? So that's the first matan. And then you've got the second one, which is Mustalah Hadith, which is written by Sheikh al-Uthaymeen, which is a very beneficial book. It's a lot more deeper than this one. This is only like 60 pages. That book that inshallah we plan to go through probably over August. He talks about hadith, chain of narrations. In it is jarh wa ta'deel, which is very important because a lot of people talk about it without even studying it. And we're going to study it with the Shaykh, rahimahullah. So that's the plan. The second level above that then, we've got al-Waraqat. I'm sure you've heard of it before, al-Waraqat. This is now Usool al-Fiqh. What we're studying here is Qawaaid al-Fiqhiyyah, which is different, but they are similar. because you're studying the diraya, but they are different as well at the same time. I'm going to explain what I mean by that. Then you got waraqat, and then we'll do bayquniya, and I'm sure you've heard of bayquniya before. I don't know when this is going to happen, but this is the idea, right? And then the highest level, the third level, will be fusul fi ilm al-Usool, which is a book written by Shaykh Uthaymeen himself in Usul al-Fiqh. And I would say it's very, very beneficial. And I was probably more detailed than a waraqat. And in Mustalah Hadith, you've got Nukhbat al-Fikr by Ibn Hajar, which has been explained by the Shaykh as well. So this is the idea here, to go through these mutun when it comes to the study of the fiqh, but as well as the study of the chain, and doing it step by step. Today though, we're beginning with, as we have said, Mukhtasar al-Qawaaid al-Fiqhiyyah. Now, before we start, we have to define what it is that we're doing here. Qawaaid Fiqhiyyah. Qaida is something which something settles, a foundation. A qaida is a foundation. We would call that a principle, or a rule, or a law, or a maxim. So you can call it whatever you want, but you're basically saying these are the rules of fiqh, Qawaaid Fiqhiyyah. What's fiqh? Fiqh, the ulama, there's different definitions, to be honest. But fiqh is the ilm of the ahkam al-shari'iyya al-amaliyya min adillatin al-tafsiliyya. Let's break that down bit by bit. Fiqh is the knowledge of the ahkam of the shari'iyya. So we're not talking about aqeedah here now. Because in the definition, you've got ahkam al-amaliyya. Amal meaning the things that you do inside, the things that you do outside. All of that is amal. So what's the ruling on? Action. This is fiqh. With the adilla al-tafsiliyya. Ibn Abdul Barr, he says, if you don't know the dalil, then you haven't got fiqh. Ijma'an. You could probably know this is what you do, but you won't call that person a faqih until he's got the dalil. Therefore, fiqh is when the person has the knowledge of the ahkam with its adilla al-tafsili. This is fiqh. So now when we're saying Qawaaid al-Fiqhiyyah, we're talking about the principles which govern the actions that a person does, which is based on the dalil. That's Qawaaid al-Fiqhiyyah. Therefore, some of the ulama have given the definition of Qawaaid al-Fiqhiyyah, huwa ilm لحكم الشرعي يعرف منها أحكام, which is the knowledge of the religious ruling, so that then you can come to know of the rulings. Let me give you an example. Okay, I'll give you an example in a minute. Let's just give you the definition, yeah? Which is that the Qawaaid al-Fiqhiyyah, they have said, okay, this is a guideline, this is a law, this is a principle, this is a maxim, whatever you want to. Because of this law, I can now understand the ruling on so many other things. That's Qawaaid al-Fiqhiyyah. And when we go through this book, you will see how that actually then makes sense when it comes to the definition. The next thing I just want to mention quickly before we actually start. This book here, let me just tell you about this book a little bit here. This book, like I said to you, it's a bit deceiving. This book is a mukhtasar of the durus of the Shaykh in Qawaaid al-Fiqhiyyah. So like what you sent me earlier, the Nadham and other books that the Shaykh has gone through when he goes to Qawaaid al-Fiqhiyyah. There's one of his students, it says his name in the introduction, I don't have his name to hand. If I just scroll down, it'll probably be here. Anyway, one of his students, what he did, I'm saying his students, what he did, his name is somewhere. Khalid ibn Saleh al-Nazzal. What he did is he got all of the Shaykh's, basically his notes from Qawaaid al-Fiqhiyyah, and he put them in bullet point and he showed them to the Shaykh. Shaykh, what do you think about all these Qawaaid? He goes, yeah, it's good. So then they published it. Now, the problem with that, and the reason why I would say that that's probably not always best suited for an introductory level, is because it's not taking you from an elementary level. He's just going to mention all of his notes, and some of it could be complicated, some of it might not be. But the Shaykh generally approved of it, and the Muassasa, which is Uthaymeen's foundation, then printed it. And it's called Mukhtasar. It's only 60 pages. And inshallah, if we go through it, like I said, there are a lot of benefits in it. And to be honest, as you will see, it's not that hard anyway. It's not that hard anyway. Especially when the scholars, when they explain Qawaaid al-Fiqhiyyah, they give a lot of examples. One of the reasons why this book is only 60 pages is that there aren't many examples, to be honest. He'll just say, this is it, basic description, move on. This is the next principle, next guideline, basic description, move on. Sometimes he does give examples, most times not. So this is what we're studying, Qawaaid al-Fiqhiyyah, principles so you can understand the rulings. Right? How does that differ to Usool al-Fiqh? Usool al-Fiqh is the study of the adilla. Al-Fiqh, al-Ijmaliyah. So now what is Quran, what is Sunnah, what is Ijma, what is Qiyas, what is Qawl al-Sahabi, what is Istihsan, what is Istislah, what is... And then, وَكَيْفِيَّةَ الْإِسْتِفَادِ مِنْهَا. How do you then benefit from it? So now I've got an ayah from the Quran, how do you benefit from it? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةِ. Okay, I understand the tafsir of it, but how do I arrange that with other evidences from the Quran and the Sunnah? That is usul al-fiqh. That's what the usuli then does, and then he comes to the conclusion that this ayah takes precedence over that, and this and that and that and this, and then that then creates the ruling. Hence, some of the ulama have said, as part of the definition of usul al-fiqh, wa hal al-mustafid, meaning the outcome for the person who wants to benefit from the fiqh. That's what usul al-fiqh involves, right? So now a person will ask, okay, usul al-fiqh is the study of the fiqh, whereas qawaid al-fiqh are the study of the rulings which can help me understand the fiqh. Everybody follow me so far, yeah? So then how do they then differ? There's a number of differences. I mean, some of the ulama, I don't want to make it lengthy, but some of the ulama have given like tens of differences between fiqh and usul al-fiqh. But usul al-fiqh, principally, as you have heard with the definition here, is the study of the evidence and how to arrange the evidence. Whereas the Qawaaid, which we're going to study here, is how to understand the ahkam. That's the first difference. The second difference, now this difference is actually quite important. The first one is connected to the definition, so you guys can already get that. But the second one is actually important, which is usul al-fiqh, because it has the study of the evidences, you will know the hukm with its evidences. Therefore, usul al-fiqh is the study of the dalil. Whereas the qawaid is the understanding and not dalil. Qawaaid is the understanding and not dalil. So nobody can come with a qaida and say, well, there's a qaida in the sharia, that means this is dalil. No. You will say that this is a qaida, this is an understanding, but you might not necessarily be able to apply that to the situation, or it might not necessarily be evidence, or it could be that you've got a qaida and there's another qaida and you choose this qaida over that one. Another difference between usul and usul al-fiqh and qawaid al-fiqhiyyah is that the usul is connected to the outcome, because it's connected to the dalil, it's connected to the outcome, meaning I've got ayah, therefore this is how I'm going to apply it. Whereas the qawaid is connected to the understanding, but it might not necessarily provide the outcome. And as we will go through, you will probably understand what I mean by some of this. These are some of the things. I mean, if you wanted more, we could give more. Like I said, some of the ulama have mentioned up to 10. But before we start, I just want to mention one last thing in our introduction here, which is that the ulama have said that there are 5 qawaid which are kulliyyah, and the rest are juz'iyyah. What does that mean in English? Kulliyyah, basically, they have said that there is nothing in the religion, when it comes to fiqh, except these 5 principles will always be taken into consideration. Because they are kulli. They are universal, they are comprehensive. The rest of the qawaid in the fiqh are juz'i. Meaning, they might apply, they might not apply. With that, then you can understand that these 5 that are kulli will always apply, will always be taken into consideration when trying to understand the Sharia, when trying to understand a hukm. What are these 5? Number 1, al-umuru bimaqasidiha. The actions are based on the intent. So now, with this qaida, now you can understand the difference between usul al-fiqh and Qawaaid al-Fiqhiyyah. Usul al-fiqh will never have something like this. It will never have something like this. Usul al-fiqh say, okay, let's look at the dalil. There's a hadith which says, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. There are ayats where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to make sure that you've rectified your intention. وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ أَلَا لِلَّهِ الدِّينُ الْخَالِصِ. Here we have a hadith. All of this now tells us, this is the dalil, the outcome now is you have to have a niyyah, you have to have ikhlas in order for your action to be valid. This is usul al-fiqh, this is the process. It's a conveyor belt of dalil producing ahkam for the hal al-mustafid. Whereas when it comes to Qawaaid al-Fiqhiyyah, what they're doing is, it's as if they're working in reverse. Where what we're basically saying is here, all of these evidences have been put together. How can we summarize all of this? Let's make a law and a principle and a guideline so that we can understand all of this in one go. Al-umur biqasidiha. Is this principle a dalil in itself? No. Can you use this principle to say, yes, this is this is my evidence for doing something? No. So what's the point of it? The point of it is so that you can understand that in the Sharia, you've got this as a principle which can help you understand the Sharia. Difference between usul, where you are going through the evidences and the practical actions which come out of that. Whereas in Qawaaid, you're basically trying to understand, what does the Sharia say about this? What does the Sharia say about that? What is the rule in the Sharia of this or that? So one of them is that whenever you've got an action in fiqh, this is kulli. Al-umur bi-maqasidiha. There is no action in fiqh except that the intent will always be part of the reason or a factor in what the person is doing. That's the first one, which is kulli. The second one, which is kulli, that the ulama have mentioned, al-yaqeen la yazulu bil-shak. If a person is certain on something, it is never removed with doubt. It can only be removed with certainty or a strong indication. Just as a side note here, look, this is just the very beginning of our studies when it comes to the principles of fiqh, etc. I can just recall now that in waraqat there are certain things which talk about this. And then in Fusul fi ilm al-Usool of Shaykh al-Uthaymeen, what I actually, when we explain it in the institute, what I call it is a chart of ilm. Where are you on this chart? So he says ilm has 6 maratib. There are 6 levels to ilm. And it starts off at yaqeen and it goes down to jahl. Jahl is the opposite of yaqeen. And in between there are so many different levels. You did wudu before you came to class. Have you still got wudu? 100%. Are you sure? That's yaqeen. But you went to the bathroom. Was it before I went wudu or after I went wudu? This is now dhan. I'm not sure. I'm actually genuinely not sure. But then when you side on one over the other, thinking that, actually, I went to the bathroom, it doesn't make sense that I got wudu. So I went to the bathroom, then I did wudu. Ghalaba dhan. This is now part of the chart of ilm. Now, I don't want to digress too much, but the point that I'm making here is that this is the barakah of ilm. That when you study one matan, then you go on to another matan, then you go on to another matan, even though you feel that, okay, I've studied usul al-fiqh before, but the more you study and the more you engage with this ilm, you will find that there is barakah in it. So now here, this is the second one, al-yaqeen la yazul bil-shak. Like the chart of knowledge that I just mentioned here, that if you've got something that you're certain on, even it could be something that you're doing or something that you're not doing. So for example, I am 100% that this food is haram. I'm not going to eat it. Until you can prove to me that I've got my yaqeen is wrong. And it could be the other way around. Like I said, it could be any hukm, but the certainty takes precedence over anything else, and it is not shaken, it's not removed, unless if you've got something on the same level. That's the second one. Third one, which is kulli, al-mashaqqa tajlibu al-taysir. Al-mashaqqa tajlibu al-taysir. Meaning, if there is difficulty in you doing something from the ahkam, there will always be a solution. And that's actually a very important benefit, because sometimes, and wallahi, I've noticed this with a lot of the shabab actually, which is that the sharia, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us as a favor, al-yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati wa raditu lakum al-islam deena, a religion that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, which is comfort, ala bi dhikrillahi tatma'innu al-qulub, which is supposed to bring about calmness and comfort and relax, has become the object of people becoming worried and panicking and wasawis and doubting. Am I good enough to be a Muslim? Is my wudu correct? Shall I go do it again? Am I in tahara? Am I in najas? And a lot of people are constantly worried about the state of their Islam and the actions that they're doing. This principle actually helps a lot, which is al-mashaqqa tajlibu al-taysir. Listen, even if you are in the situation that you think that you're in, right? I'm not good enough, I'm still in najas, etc. Then the sharia is always going to give you a solution. You can't live like that. Allah hasn't given you a religion so that you can carry on living like that. That's why some of the ulama, well, that's one of the reasons why some of the ulama have said that. This is from the Qawaaid, al-Kulliyyah, which is that if there is difficulty in whatever it is that you're trying to do when it comes to the ahkam, there's always going to be a solution. The fourth one, ad-darar yuzal. Ad-darar yuzal. Meaning, if there is any kind of harm, in something that you're experiencing or something that you're trying to do from the fiqh, remember we're talking about fiqh here, yeah? Qawaaid al-Fiqhiyyah, we're talking about the practical actions. If there is any kind of harm in the things that you're doing, or the way that you live in your life, it will always be removed by the sharia. Which is a benefit in itself that some of the ulama, you know, like I said, this is from the matan, but the more you study usul al-fiqh and Qawaaid al-Fiqh, some of the ulama have used this to say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you a religion of perfection. That there is no deficiency in this religion at all. Why? Because ad-darar yuzal, there is nothing except that Islam has got a solution for it. And then number 5, al-'ada muhakkama. Al-'ada muhakkama. Meaning the customs of the people is muhakkama, meaning is also legislation. What does that mean? So if people are doing something, I use that as dalil to say that I can do it? No. What it means is that the kitab and the sunnah, in the way you implement it, not understand it, understanding salaf as-salih, but the way you implement it is in line with the culture and the customs that you live with. So right now we're speaking a language which is foreign to Islam, but is that allowed? The answer is yes. Why? Because ad muhakkama. Right now, you keep ties of kinship. How do you keep ties of kinship? Phone, WhatsApp, Facebook, social media. Is that all allowed? There's no dalil for any of that. Why? Well, how can you say that it's still keeping ties of kinship? Ad muhakkama. Meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you the ruling. This is how you do it. This is how you stay away from it. How you then go do it in what is applicable and easy for you culturally, go ahead and do it. There's no harm in that. Yeah. Al-'ada muhakkama, I can't remember what I said, but al-'ada, sorry? He said the customs of the people. The customs of the people is legislative, I think I probably said al-'ada muhakkama. And perhaps when we go through this, I've not read the entire book, I'll be honest with you, but perhaps we'll go through this later on as well, all 5 of these. But I just want to mention something with al-muhakkam, which is very important, which is that the 'ada refers to all of the people, what they see as being acceptable. Now, this is a contemporary issue, and I don't want to make it complicated, but typically when the ulama talked about al-muhakkama, which is that the Somalis are with the Somalis, and the Pakistanis are with the Pakistanis, and the Turks are with the Turks, and the Arabs are with the Arabs. Now it's just, what ad are we going to go by? We've got Somali ad, we have banana or rice, and then you got other things that are going on. So what is the ad anymore? So this is the issue. Some of the ulama have gone into looking at what is the ad, and the answer to that is that the ad is what is applicable for all. What you do in your home from your background and your culture does not apply to me now. That is not what we include in here. What is acceptable for everyone is al-Muhakkama. Yeah. Huh? You don't understand that? What I'm saying here is that if you're doing something which is particular for yourself or your community, that is not al-Muhakkama. Al-Muhakkama is something which is acceptable for everyone. Everyone in society, basically. Yeah?
Every society.
In each society has its own ada. Each society has its own ada.
It's not specific society.
When I went to Saudi, it was absolutely normal for people to leave their shoes at the door of the masjid. Literally, akhi, it's like you're climbing a mountain to get into the masjid. Ada, this is wrong. I mean, this is not right. But everyone was doing it. If you did that here, what would happen? They'd probably throw your shoes in the bin. So now the thing is here is that you got different ada for different places. Saudi, that's absolutely fine. It's normal. Over here, it's not applicable. So now, how is it right there and wrong there? Is there a contradiction in religion? Is there a contradiction in application of something that we're doing when it comes to religion? No. Ada muhakkama. The culture and the customs of what is acceptable by all the people is taken into consideration. What they do in Saudi is different to what you do here. But there may be certain things now. We're living in a world and a time now that a lot of things are similar. Yeah? Should we start then? Right. This book, like I said, is a set of notes from the Shaykh's Durus. It's not necessarily a book in itself. It's a compilation of different principles from different durus. Some of them are going to be easy, some of them are going to be straightforward, some of them might need further explanation. That's why it's not as straightforward as it may seem. That's the first thing. The second thing, there are about 100 Qawaaid, and I'll try, like I said, I'll probably write them on the board so that you've got something to look at. And like I said, what we'll do is we'll go through the principles. If I can just explain the principle, and if you need an example, then just let me know. But I'm just going to basically read what it says. Okay? So now, number one, I'll write in English. Number one and number two are actually connected. And they're connected for a reason, which is one of the principles in the Sharia is to preserve before benefiting. That's a qaida in itself. But what's the principle here? The Shaykh in the book we have Dar'ul Mafasid in the Tazahum. What does that mean, in the Tazahum? Meaning, if you're trying to do something, but there's so many different factors at Tazahum, we will say here, Dar'ul Mafasid, repelling what is harmful, Muqaddamun ala jalm al-masalih. So in English, what this basically means is, if there are a number of, I'm just going to put down factors, but if there are a number of outcomes, if there are a number of actions, if there are a number of different things that you need to take into consideration, then repelling harm takes precedence over doing good. I'll give you one very simple example of this when it comes to... Let me give you the second one, because they're connected. Number two, al-mafasid إذا انغمرت بجانب المصالح انتفى حكمها. Okay, I'm going to do that separately. This one here, let's just go back to this one. If there are a number of factors repelling harm, repelling harm takes precedence over doing good. I want to pray Salatul Isha. Good. If I stay up till 11:45 to pray Salatul Isha, I'm going to be harmed physically. I need my sleep. I could end up missing Fajr. I could end up having broken sleep. I need to wake up 7 o'clock because I need to go to work. Benefits: fulfilling obligations, doing acts of worship, staying up at night, worshipping Allah. Benefits, benefits, benefits. Harm, harm, harm. What do we do in that scenario? There are a number of factors. What do we do? Repelling the harm takes precedence over the good. Let's try and secure this one here, which is not falling into harm. Therefore, let's not try and do the good that I'm thinking of doing, like staying up late, etc. So in that scenario, as we have heard from other Qawaaid, what we will do is then we can say, listen, for this person, it's probably best for him to combine. For this person, it might be best for him to combine not every single night, but every other night so he gets enough rest. But then for the other days, he can stay up and it's not going to harm him so much. I don't know. There could be different solutions. But this is the principle. When you got that law, then you can understand. This is what we're trying to say when it comes to Qawaaid al-Fiqhiyyah. These are about laws. And with these laws, you are then able then to understand how to approach fiqh. We're not studying these laws to say, okay, this is the law, then you do this, and then that's it. There's only one outcome. There's never always going to be one outcome. So this is the principle. If you're trying to do something good, but there are factors involved in it, real factors that are also bad, then we repel the bad before we do the good. This principle was used a lot over COVID by the ulama, which is they want to come to the masjid, they want to stand shoulder to shoulder, they want to do all of these different things, they want to pray with their face uncovered because it's makruh for you to have a face covering while you're praying, brothers and sisters. But then what do we do? I mean, these are commands that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us. Come to the masjid, masjids were shut. When you do come to the masjid, stand next to each other. You weren't able to do that. You had to have social distancing and all that kind of stuff. You had to wear a face mask. It was mandatory for you to do all of those things. So now, those things, the Sharia says don't do them when you want to pray. But then there's a mafsada, which is obviously the virus and the pandemic. What do we do then? Let's repel the harm by coming to the salah still. No, I don't know of any time, Allah knows best, I don't know any time in history where Muslims have prayed like that. Maybe it's happened, I don't know. But distance, there's a person 2 meters away from you, and they're all wearing face masks. I mean, how is that a saf? But the thing is, the reason why it's valid, and the reason why the scholars have said it, the reason why you found it happened with in the Haramain, the kibar ulama doing it, is because of this principle here. Repelling harm takes precedence over trying to do anything which is good. The second one, al-mafasid إذا انغمرت بجانب المصالح انتفع حكمها. Meaning, the Shaykh is saying here, if there is a maslaha and there is a mafsada, meaning if there is a betterment and there is a harm, but the betterment outweighs the harm, then we give that as the final ruling. Or if the harm outweighs the betterment, then we give that as the final ruling. So how am I going to write that? Here it says, so if there is harm, but the betterment, why are we saying harm here? Because remember, look, in the red here, from the principles of the Sharia as well, but these are known as the daruriyat, the absolute essentials. The Sharia has come to preserve people's welfare before doing anything which is trying to be beneficial to them. That's a principle which governs everything. So now, here, number 2, if there is a harm, but the betterment outweighs the harm, then we'll give it the ruling of what is greater. The Shaykh hasn't given an example, but I'm sure you can think of examples here. Now, look, you guys need to go to university. Is there a college or university where it's not mixed? What do you do then? Stay at home? But then why'd you go then? You know it's haram. You know there's music. You know there's mixing. You know that your teacher's going to be a female. You have to look at her. You know there's going to be things that they say which is not right either. Why'd you go? Because you know that there is a greater good. there is a betterment that can come out which is going to be of a greater good. So inshallah, hopefully, you're not doing anything wrong in that. Therefore, the ruling of the harm is changed because of the greater betterment. Those two are two principles that we find in the beginning of the book, which are focusing on preserving and removing harm. Principle number 3, al-wasa'il laha hukmul ghayat. The means or the road or the path or the measures takes the same ruling as the objective. Salatul Jum'ah. Let me see if he's giving an example. He's not given any. Yeah, actually has. Okay, so now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَلَا تَسُبُّوا الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ فَيَسُبُّوا اللَّهَ عَدْوًا بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. Are you allowed to say anything disrespectful about a deity which is being worshipped, which is not actually a deity? So you see an idol, can you say this idol, it can't benefit you, can't harm you, it's just clay, etc. I don't know why you worship. You are allowed to say those things. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying in this ayah here, if you were to revile them to the mushriks, then they will, and it creates an outcome where they end up reviling Allah back based on jahl and no ilm, then don't say that about their idols. So the Shaykh is saying here, if that's the means which leads to that outcome where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be reviled out of ignorance by the enemies of Allah and those people who hate Allah, then don't do it in the first place. This is the ayah that the Shaykh has used. But when it comes to, ahkam as well, let me give you another example here is that Salatul Jum'ah, wajib. There is no exception for Salatul Jum'ah. Irrespective of whether you live close to the masjid or live far from the masjid, irrespective of whether you believe that the normal salawat is wajib for you to attend or not, all the ulama are agreed from the former madhahib that if you are inside the city, you must go for Salatul Jum'ah, irrespective of whether you hear the adhan or not, whether you live close or not. So now, the objective is for you to go to Salatul Jum'ah, and that is now wajib. What is the ruling on you taking the means? Also wajib. Yeah? So a person can't say, I can't go because it's too far for me to walk. No, we will say it's wajib for you to then look for something else, which will take you to fulfill that obligation. Here, what we're talking about ruling, keyword here, ruling. Now again, when we study Usool al-Fiqh, we don't have this in Qawaaid al-Fiqhiyyah, but when you study Usool al-Fiqh, you will study the 5 rulings. You will study wajib, what is mustahab. But that is because that is the study of the text, so you come to the outcome. We're not studying outcomes here. We're studying rules and principles. So when you understand this rule and principle, then you can understand this is what Sharia says about this, what it says about that, it says about repelling harm. So now here, the ruling here, we've not got much focus on it, but I just want to focus on it for 1 second, because here, when we say ruling, it could be any one of those 5 rulings. So it could be, like we've just seen an example, what the Shaykh gave us, of something which is haram. If the outcome is haram, but the means for you to come to that outcome is halal, but you know it's going to lead to haram, then doing that thing is haram, even though it's permissible. You with me on that one? Because the means takes the same ruling as the objective, if you know for certainty. Right, principle number 4. We did this before. Al-mashaqqa, difficulty, is removed with ease. Al-mashaqqa tajlib al-taysir. And the Shaykh gives an example of tayammum, and probably the most famous example that the ulama use. You're not able to perform wudu because you ain't got water, or you've got water and it's going to be harmful, or you've got water and it's not enough. 3 conditions for tayammum. So then, what do we do when we can't do wudu? There's difficulty here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you a way out where He says do tayammum instead. I think that's straightforward, isn't it? Which is that, so we did this before in the introduction, which is the point here, which is this one here, is that if you've got any kind of difficulty the Sharia will have a solution for it. It's not possible for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to legislate for you something or forbid for you something and you're just stuck in that situation. مشقة تجلب التيسير. Number 5. لا يسقط الميسور بسقوط المعسور. How do I translate this? Right. I want to translate it in meaning here. The meaning of this qaida here is, if you are not able to do some, it doesn't mean all is overlooked. Very important principle. You see this in the masjid, you see a lot of people doing this, yeah? Wallahi, I saw one guy, yeah? He comes to the masjid. He comes, he's chilling with his mates, he's walking into the masjid, he's laughing and joking. Goes to the back of the masjid, gets a chair, sits down, don't even takbir standing up, sits down, Allahu Akbar. Prays the whole salah like that, gets back up, gets the chair, goes put it at the back, goes outside, has a cigarette with his friends. Now, I don't know his situation, I didn't ask him, I don't know him, I just saw it. But if you are not able to do some, it doesn't mean all of it is overlooked. And a lot of Muslims do that. Perhaps he had an excuse where he can't do ruku' or sujood. Perhaps. But that doesn't mean now that the whole salah he prays sitting down. The principle here is, as the Shaykh is giving the evidence for, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَسْتَطَعْتُمْ, meaning you fear Allah as much as you can. In the bits that you can still fear Allah in, you continue. You with me on that one? Which is that if you are able to do some of it, you must do whatever it is that you can. And the bits that you can't, only those are overlooked. Principle number 6. Al-ajz yusqat or yusqit al-wajib. Difficulty yusqit, meaning it absolves a person from what is wajib. That's the wrong word. Difficulty is the wrong word. I'm sorry if you've written that. Inability. What does this qaida mean? Qaida number 6. If you are not able to do something, that thing is no longer wajib upon you. If you are not able to do something, that thing is no longer wajib upon you. Somebody showed me a clip yesterday that there's a person who's got a prosthetic leg, a metal leg or fake leg, yeah? Do they wash over their foot to the ankle? No? Why not? But he's got a foot. It's just not his. But he's still walking on it. He's still going to pray on it. Does he wash it or not? No? Why not? It's not his foot. Based on this one here. If he hasn't got a foot, he's not obligated to wash over it. If you haven't got something, there's no wajib. If you can't do something physically, there's no ability for it, the ruling of wajib has been lifted from you. But here, focus here.
In the same way, if we're diabetic, for instance,
Yeah.
it's difficult for you to fast.
Yeah. Jazakallah khair. It's not wajib. He's not able to do it. But remember, these are principles, yeah? The outcome there may be difference on it. So now, even though Uthaymeen has this principle, and this is a principle which is accepted by many of the ulama, there's a mas'ala that comes up with ihram. I remember the Shaykh asked this question of Uthaymeen. If you've got a person who's bald, he's got no hair on his head, right? And he now wants to take off his ihram. Does he shave his head? There's nothing to shave, so what do? The Shaykh said still do it, because there could be little bits of hair that you could take off. Whereas others from the ulama, even the contemporary ulama, they say this qaida here, which is that look at his head, there's nothing there, just take your ihram off, it's done. Why? Because in inability, yusqit al-wajib. Now, Principle number 6 is a bit different to principle number 7. Principle number 7 reads, كل الواجبات تسقط بالعجز. All of the wajibat are removed and absolved when you are not able. And what that basically means is that here, number 6 is, if you are unable, it's not wajib upon you in the first place. But كل الواجبات تسقط بالعجز, meaning this thing was wajib upon you, but because of an inability has come about from you, now it becomes, now it's absolved from you. And the evidence, I mean, number 6 and number 7 is very similar, but it's just the arrangement is a little bit different. And the evidences he brings are evidence I'm sure you've had before. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها فاتقوا الله ما استطعتم, and ayat which are similar to that. However, when the Shaykh is saying here, number 7 though, remember 6 is different to 7 slightly, but in number 7, something was wajib. You then become unable to do it. Do we say that it's not wajib upon you? We'll say yes, but the Shaykh says, إِلَّا أَن يَكُونْ لَهَا بَدْلٌ فَيَأْخُذْ بِالْبَدْلِ. Unless if there is a substitute that the Sharia has told you to do, then you must take that substitution. Yeah.
But the one before, number 6,
Yeah.
you couldn't do it in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. Number 6 has got to do with inability from the beginning. But number 7 is where the person is able to do it, so it's wajib upon him. Then the inability came. Then we will say, okay, no longer wajib upon you now because you've got that inability. But if there is a substitute, similar to tayammum that we've seen before, then the person must do that. Similar to siyam then. If the person is not able to fast, it will say, okay, khalas, you don't need to fast. But is there a badal? Yes, he has to give a fidyah, and then that becomes wajib instead. Number 8. Are you guys fed up on my writing? Shall I carry on? You sure? But it's smudging now. Right, number 8, the Shaykh says. Now, number 8 is similar to number 6 and number 7. Number 8 is more of an example. In number 8, it says, يُصَلِّي الْإِنسَانِ قَائِمًا فَإِنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ قَائِدًا فَإِنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ عَلَى جَنْبٍ. If the person is able to stand, then he stands when he's praying. If he's not, then he prays sitting. And if he's not able to, then he prays on his side, on his right hand side, laying down. But then, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, the Shaykh has brought this here, that if the person is not able to pray at all, if he's not able to pray at all, do we say that he doesn't need to pray? How is it that he can't pray at all? In the books of fiqh, there's a discussion. Allah protect us. I mean, I never actually thought that I would imagine that this is actually going to ever happen, but Allah musta'an, it's happening in front of our eyes. But in the books of fiqh, they have discussed if a person is completely naked, for example, how does he pray? Like his aura is not covered, what do you do? Do you pray or not pray? Or a person has got nothing to do wudu with and nothing to do tayammum with. It's happening in front of, I mean, the world's just being quiet. But anyway, what the point is, what do you do in that scenario? So now the Hanafis and the Malikis have said, and this is what Ibn Taymiyyah is talking about in number 8 here, فَإِن لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ كُلِّيَّةً, meaning I've got no clothes whatsoever. I've got nothing that I can cover my aura with. Or I've got nothing that I could do wudu or even tayammum with. كُلِّيَّة سَقَطَتْ أَنْهُ الصَّلَاةِ فَهَلْ هَذَا صَحِيح? Meaning, this is the question. The Hanafis and the Malikis have said, you don't do anything. You can't pray like that. How are you going to pray like that? You don't pray. You pray qada when you are able to pray with your aura covered or doing wudu or tayammum. But Ibn Taymiyyah says, هذا قول ضعيف, and this is the view of Ahmad and Shafi'i, where they have said, no, if you're naked, then you still pray. But look what they've said, you pray sitting down to cover your aura. And if you can't do, and this is a situation for a lot of people now, as in like, we quite often get questions where people have had the cataract removed. Now, just, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but this is just an example of it. You have to do wudu. If you can't do wudu, then you wipe the water on places where you're supposed to wash. Normally, if you wipe over washed areas, then the salah won't be, the wudu won't be valid. So imagine my face here, yeah? Instead of washing my face, I just wipe over my face. It's not valid. It's not valid. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, فَغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ. You have to wash it. So that's the asl here. You wash. You wash what washes and you wipe what wipes. To the point that the Shaykh said in Uthaymeen, he said that if you put your head under the tap and you washed your head, it won't be valid. Despite the fact that you put more water what is required, but you didn't do what Allah said, which is to wipe. All you have to do is wipe. This is wash, this is wipe. Right, so that's step number one. If you're not able to do that, then you wipe over what is washed. Because we're talking about illness here. If you can't do that, then you do tayammum. Meaning, cataract here, they've had an eye operation, they can't wash. They've even said no water, any exposure to water at all. So you can't wash, you can't wipe. What do we do then? We leave that bit, we do the rest of the wudu, as we have seen from one of the principles that we just seen there, is that if you can't do some of it, then you do the rest of it. So you do the rest of it. But what do we do about this patch here? Tayammum. How's tayammum? Tayammum is like that. But then you can't put earth if you can't put water, then you can't put sand, you can't put mud. So that's step number 3, tayammum. If you can do tayammum, you do tayammum. But if you can't do that, then we go to this masala here, which is that you just leave it. Whereas others from the ulama have said leave it, but you need to do qada. But the Hanabil and Shafi'i said no, you don't need to do that. So now this is, like I said, it's not really a principle where in number 8 he's saying, listen, if you're not able to do it, then you just carry on and you do it. As in, like, if you're not able to do it the way that you're supposed to, you just do it with the way that you can, and inshallah, it'll be valid. Number 8, لا يستباح المحرم إلا بواجب. The haram is not allowed. We all know that, yeah? Obviously. So many things are haram, not allowed to do it. Except to fulfill a wajib. I'm sure you got examples of this, and I'm going to ask you, because I know you're going to give the example that everybody knows, and even the Shaykh has mentioned it here, it's that common. Give me an example of this, Qaida. Yeah?
Could you say, for example, you're working and you lie to your boss or your manager and say, oh, I need to go to the toilet, and you need to pray salah, because it's about to leave the time?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
What's it called? You're about to die and you see pork in it.
That's the one. The Shaykh has said here, al-mayta haram. Everybody knows mayta is haram. Wa akluha al-mudtar halal. He's going to die. So he eats it in order to stay alive. Now, again, like I said, we'll talk about this all later. But going back to what Zakaria said as well, when it comes to being allowed to fulfill a wajib, here we're talking about necessity. And I don't want to go into it right now. Necessity is spelled wrong, I know. But I don't want to go into it right now. But here, very important. From the conditions of necessity, I might as well just say it very quickly. Number 1, there has to be a harm. A real harm. Number 2, the harm has to be severe. Okay, so number 1, okay, if I don't go to the mixed wedding, my mum's not going to speak to me. Is she really not going to speak to you? Or is she just going to be angry for an hour and then everything's back to normal? Then that's not a harm. But if it's actually going to cause a problem, where she's going to get angry, she's going to get upset, she's going to start shouting, that's real. Okay, number 2, is the harm severe or not? Like I said, is there shouting involved or not? If a person is fasting, he's got a bit of a headache, that's not harm, that is severe. So you can't break your fast on that. You can't break your fast. Then it still remains haram for him to break his fast. So number 1, there has to be a harm. Number 2, the harm has to be severe. Number 3, there is no alternative. Can you have a nap? Go to sleep before you break your fast. Maybe the headache will go away. Maybe it will push it throughout the day for you and you'll wake up and it won't be long left until Maghrib. Is there an alternative? If there's an alternative, you must seek the halal alternative instead. And number 4, now going back to your question, your example as a career, is that there can't be a greater harm. And this is why some of the ulama have said that if a person is thirsty and they're going to die of thirst, but there's only alcohol, even the alcohol is haram. Because if he drinks the alcohol to stay alive, then it's going to be even greater harm. Now, again, each situation is different. I'm not going to put a ruling on that, but this is just an example of where they have said, look, it's no longer a necessity if there's a greater harm. And riba is an example of that, actually. Some of the people of ilm have said, look, you live in a time where it's darur that you have to get a riba-based contract to get a house. What are you going to do? The council won't give you a house which is legitimate. Landlords are crooks. You're going to move from house to house. Prices are extortionate. It's cheaper for you to get a riba. So some of them have made that argument. I'm not plugging that argument. But others have said, no, riba is always going to be a greater harm. And renting is actually the less the harm. So this is just by way of example that it's not a necessity, according to those who argued back by saying, no, there is no necessity for riba. Right. Number 10. Number 10 is actually quite strange, because you know when I was reading this before class, I came across number 10, I was like, wait a minute. And then I actually Googled what Uthaymeen said about this one, and he said this is not a qaida. But it's in the book. So the Sheikh actually disagrees with this qaida, and you can find it on YouTube in different places. But the qaida reads like this, but we can still benefit from it, and there's actually a very good benefit in this. ما وجب الاحتياط له صار فردا. What you need to be careful of becomes wajib. The Shaykh says this is not a qaida, but we could probably interpret it or have a sub-qaida from this, which is, if you're confused between two opinions, halal, haram, halal, are you allowed to have Haribos or not? You know, a lot of the youth that ask me this question, like little kids, teenagers, can I eat Haribos? Is it halal gelatin or not? I really want one. But we will say, Akhi, listen, there's an alternative. Go for the beef one, the halal one. Anyway, whatever the case. The point is gelatin. Can I eat gelatin? Some say yes, some say no. I'm confused. What do we do in that scenario? We will say, in that scenario, you need to be careful. That is wajib. I'm so confused, I'm going to stay away from it. Or it could be the other way around. I'm confused, but everybody's telling me to do it, but I'm still not certain whether I should be doing it. But I'm going to do it anyway. Give you an example. Is Salah in Jama'ah, is that wajib or not? Two very strong opinions. Some say sunnah, majority say sunnah, and then you've got some who say that it is wajib. Salah in Jama'ah with the conditions that you live close enough and there are no impediments, that there's no harm for you to go to the masjid and go back. If you can do that, then according to some is wajib. According to the majority, is sunnah. Right. I've had both views. I don't know. Which one is it? You have to go with what is safer. So it could be that you end up doing something to be safer, or it could be that you end up staying away from something in order to be safer. Number 11. If the Sharia, إذا نهى الشريعة عن الشيء فإن هذا النهي يشمل بعده وأجزاء. If something is haram, if the Sharia has said something is haram, that includes all and part. I think that's clear, isn't it? Meaning if something is haram, then you can't have any involvement with it. The Shaykh doesn't actually give us an example, but here we've got evidence where the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Ma nahaytukum anhu fajtanibu." Whatever I've told you to stay away from it completely. So going back to work, actually, this is an example of this, right? So if a person says, for example, I am a person who works in Tesco's, and 99% of my job is halal, but I do have to stock haram food, haram drinks, I have to transport it, etc., etc. Is it permissible for him to have that job? We will say, no, it's not allowed. Why? Because his job isn't outright haram. It's not completely haram, fair enough. but there are aspects of it which are haram. Right, number 12. Am I right to carry on, Ustad? Yeah. Number 12. إذا عاد النهي إلى ذات العبادة فإن العبادة تكون باطلة. Now, here's the important benefit when it comes to Qawaaid Fiqhiyyah. Every single madhab has their books on Usool al-Fiqh and they have their madhab on Qawaaid Fiqhiyyah. This is a principle which applies mostly to the Hanabila than others. Which is, principle number 12 is that if you have something which is prohibited and it is connected to an act of worship, what is the ruling on the act of worship? Invalid. And the Shaykh uses as a, this is well known from the Hanabila, because they have said at-tahrim yaqtadi al-fasad, meaning if there's something that is haram, then it just necessitates that that thing is completely corrupt. So how is it possible that a person is wearing a garment and he's got a Manchester United logo on it and then he's saying Allahu Akbar and he's praying? Yeah, he's got images. How is it possible that he's covering his awrah with something which is haram? You can't do both at the same time. So they have then said, if you're doing something prohibited, in trying to do an act of worship, the act of worship is invalid. Some of the Hanabila have said, if the prohibition goes to the conditions of the act of worship or the arkan of the act of worship, then it becomes invalid, otherwise it doesn't. And from the evidences that the Shaykh uses is man amil amal laysa alayhi amruna fahuwa rad. Anyone who does an action which is not in accordance to the way that we've done it, then that action is invalid. Therefore, did the Messenger of Allah ever pray with, did the Messenger of Allah ever do an act of worship which involved haram? So they have made the argument to say, look, if you're doing that, then that. For me, what seems to be more correct, and this is the view of the majority, is that if you've done something which is prohibited, as long as you have fulfilled the conditions of the act of worship is valid, but there is still a carrier of sin. And I remember, I can't remember which sheikh it was, but he was asked about a sister who is wearing like trousers and clothes, not an abaya, normal clothes that she probably wears outside, while she's praying her salah. And he said that the salah is valid. I think it was Shaykh Salih Fawzan actually. I don't want you to quote me on that though. He said the salah is valid, but she's carrying the sin for doing that action. So now, if we go with this principle, the act of worship is not valid because she's doing something sinful at the same time, which is she's praying in front of other people in this way. So this here, I'll just put a star next to it. We just need to take a little bit of caution on that one because not everybody agrees with that qaida. However, I mean, out of respect towards Allah and respect to doing the act of worship, nobody's going to do that anyway, in their right mind. Who would want to do something which is prohibited whilst they're doing an act of worship? Even the person who's not practiced throughout the year, he stops listening to music during the day in Ramadan. I would hope so anyway. So that one there, you need to pay attention to that one. Right, number 13. If I can just do number 13, 14 and 15. And then number 16, 17, 18, 19 is very good. These next few ones after today's lesson, next week's lesson, very good. How can you tell the difference between the Messenger of Allah ﷺ doing something as a normal action and an act of worship? We had a discussion yesterday. I went to Birmingham yesterday and I asked the class this yesterday and everybody was saying, so I asked them, you know the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, he ate dates, yeah? Is it sunnah for you to eat dates? Is that sunnah for you to make that as part of your staple diet? Wallahi, most of the people answered the question and saying, yeah, I mean, if he did it, then that's what we should be doing. So how do we differentiate? So now all of our banana and rice is out the window now. We should just be eating dates and water because she said, radiyallahu anha, that we used to survive on the aswadat, and that's it. On the dates and water, that's it. That's what we should be. But no scholar will say that that's sunnah now. So then how do you differentiate between the actions of the Messenger of Allah? This is what we're going to be looking at next week. Anyway, number 13, al-aslu fil adat al-ibaha. Like I said, it's not hard. I'm sure you've heard this before. I'm sure you've heard it many times. Some of them are new. Some of the way that they've put it together is a bit different. But yeah, it is kind of complicated. But like I said, The more you get used to it, you will see, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it easy. وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ وَالْأَصْلُ فِي عِبَادَةٍ. What's the asl in ibadah? Huh? Haram. Excellent. So not haram. I'll just put down haram here. وَالْأَصْلُ فِي الْعِبَادَاتِ الْحَذَرِ. The Shaykh said hadar, actually, to refrain. When it comes to al-ibadah, you need to refrain until the Sharia has established that this is an act of worship. أَمْ لَهُمْ شُرَكَاء شَرَعُوا لَهُم مِنَ الدِّينِ مَا لَمْ يَأْذَنْ بِهِ اللَّهُ. Have they got partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who has legislated for them a religion who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasn't given the permission for? قُلْ اللَّهَ أَذِنَ لَكُمْ أَمْ عَلَى اللَّهِ تَفْتَرُونَ. Has Allah permitted for you to do this act of worship, or are you creating lies? Therefore, when it comes to acts of worship, you need dalil. Can you celebrate the Prophet's birthday? No, why not? Because of this principle. Because of this principle. But remember, like we said before, these principles are not dalil in itself. But what we will say is, this principle helps us understand the ruling on that outcome, which is celebrating the Prophet's birthday. But then we will look for dalil to understand why the ulama came out with this principle. So it's important that we're learning these qawaaid so that we can understand what the Sharia says. As for customs, then it's all right. So now, like going back to the dates and the banana rice thing, alhamdulillah, I can understand that. Now everything is permissible. I can eat it. Because when it comes to customs, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sakata an ashya rahmatan lakum ghayru nisyan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has left it for you. He didn't forget, because Allah doesn't forget. وَمَا كَانَ رَبُّكَ نَسِيًّا. But He done it out of a mercy. Therefore, when it comes to customs and normal actions, permissible. When it comes to acts of worship, you can't get closer to Allah unless you have a way to get closer to Him by it. Yeah.
Social media is like a hadith.
Yeah.
Chicken.
Yeah.
If someone eats chicken intentionally, they would.
That's very good, and inshallah we'll look at that next week, which is now, if a person is doing a normal action, because the Prophet ﷺ did a normal action, but he wants to do that normal action in order to be like the Messenger of Allah, will he be rewarded for it or not? And you have many examples of the companions doing that. Abdullah ibn Umar used to go with the same place as the Messenger of Allah, even resting at the same places where he rested at Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Anas bin Malik used to eat the dubba, which is like a pumpkin, like a squash, but not squash thing. He used to eat it because the Messenger of Allah used to like eating it. Imam Ahmad was asked about having long hair. He said if a person has the intention of trying to be like the Messenger of Allah, then yeah, inshallah, he'll be rewarded for it. However, as we'll look at next week, is it something which is legislated? So we are differentiating now between the action and the niyyah and the action. So we will say, no, it's not sunnah for you to have a liking for squash or pumpkin, whatever, dubba, whatever it actually is. If you don't like it, you don't like it. If you don't like it, it doesn't mean that you're going against the sunnah, but you've got those two different things there. If you want to eat it and you want to eat it because you like it, but also you want to be following the Messenger of Allah because he liked it, well, you shall hopefully get reward for it. Yeah, go on. 14:15 is connected to this one. 14, ضابط al-ibadah. What is the guideline in worship? This is important. You know, when it comes to Qawaaid al-Fiqhiyyah, especially when it comes to fiqh in general, you have dawabit. And a dawabit is basically a guideline on a particular topic. So it might not necessarily be fulfilling all areas of the Sharia. You will have a dawabit in tahara, you have a dawabit in najasa, you have a dawabit in salah. So this is now, the Shaykh is saying here, dawabit al-ibadah, meaning what is worship. He says here, كل ما يتقرب الإنسان به إلى الله. So from the Qawaaid al-Fiqhiyyah is that anything which gets you closer to Allah is an act of worship. Like I said, it's connected to 13. And then 14 is worship. 15, ضابط العادة, like we said in the introduction, al-muhakkama. العادة ما فعل الإنسان حسب عادة الناس وعرفهم. What the person does according to what everybody else is doing from the customs of the place of where he lives, such as clothing and whatever is similar to that. Right, we'll stop at 16 And bi-idhnillah, we'll carry on, inshallah, next week. Yes, bro, yeah, go ahead. Any questions with any of today's class? There's a lot of terminologies, there's a lot of principles. But like I said, inshallah, I don't think it's something that you can't necessarily grasp, even if you're studying it for the first time. The audio is going to be available, so if you do want to hear it again, by all means. And inshallah, like I said, we'll continue next week. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He grants us the best of tawfiq and success, and that He gives us fiqh of the religion and its ta'weel. Allahu a'lam, sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi.